The Policy of Containment During the Cold War by Anelman Harris. The policy of containment is a foreign policy pursued by the United States in the late 1940s and the early 1950s to check the policy of the Soviet Union. The policy was created and executed by the United States after World War II. Communism threatened the democratic freedom in the United States. The Soviet Union wanted a world modeled on their own countries, societies, and values. The Soviet claimed they provided all citizens with economic and social rights, but the U.S. saw communism as a slave state that controlled the private life and thoughts of its citizens. This threat violated both democratic rights and civil liberties. Therefore, America continued its efforts to make sure that communism did not spread to the United States and other nations that have not yet moved politically toward the Soviet Union communism. The policy is a containment plan that the U.S. used in the Cold War to prevent the Soviet Union from spreading communism by providing either military support, economic and/or technical assistance to non-communist countries. Blocking the expansion of the USSR and communism was originally devised by U.S. diplomat and historian George F. Kennan, known as the Father of Containment. Kennan's writing inspired the Truman Doctrine and the U.S. foreign policy of containment during the Truman administration. He formulated the policy of containment for fighting the Cold War with the Soviet Union during 1947 and 1989. Kennan's ideas first came to the public's attention in 1947 in the form of an anonymous contribution to the journal Foreign Affairs, the so-called X article. Kennan's policy was controversial, and columnist Walter Lippmann attacked the X article for failing between vital and peripheral interests. Kennan's article also implied that the United States should face down the Soviet Union and colonist allies whenever and wherever they posed a risk of gaining influence. Kennan defended Western Europe, Japan, and the United States, all major centers of industrial powers, against the Soviet expansion. While some criticized Kennan's policy for being too defensive, John Foster Dulles declared during the 1952 election campaign in the United States policy should not be containment, but the rollback of the Soviet power and the eventual liberation of Eastern Europe. Kennan's successor, Paul Knight, saw the Soviet threat primarily in military terms. He also interpreted Kennan's call for the adroit and vigilant application for counterforce to mean the use of military power, but Kennan saw the threat to be primarily political. In 1950s, Knight's conception of containment won out over Kennan's NSC 68, a policy document prepared by the National Security Council and signed by Truman, called for a drastic expansion of the U.S. military budget. Despite all the criticism, the policy defeats that Kennan suffered in 1950s containment made sense for blocking the expansion of the Soviet influence and remained the basic strategy of the United States during the Cold War. Italy also had a strong and dynamic communist party. Therefore, Italy caused concerns to the U.S. leaders throughout the Cold War. Worries became even more acute in the 1970s after the PCI spelled out its historic compromise strategy whose objective was to propel the communists into cabinet positions within a broad coalition government. Italy had the most powerful communist party in the Western world. France and Italy communists had gained considerable popularity and political strength from the gallant fight against fascism and Nazism. During the Cold World War II, both France and Italy had participated in post-war governments, and after their eviction from power in 1947 had exerted a large sway on political, social, and cultural life of their respective countries. Italy's plight mattered also for domestic reasons. Should the communists have entered the government, the loss of Italy would have been disastrous for the administration in place, or so was it expected. During the Cold War, surely no one wanted to be dubbed soft on communism or alienate Italian American voters. The policy of containment was used during the Cold War in the years of 1945 through 1991. The term containment was first used in U.S. tragedies immediately following World War II, but George F. Kennan, a Foreign Service officer and diplomat working in the American Embassy in Moscow, articulated the policy of containment when he sent the long telegram on February 22, 1946, in which he advised a long-term, patient but firm and vigilant containment of Russian expansive tendencies. The purpose of containment policy was to restrict the spread of communism abroad by diplomatic, military, and economic actions.